Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. We're very happy to be here to present our study that we did last year about academia's responses to crisis. We all know that this crisis, COVID-19 pandemic, is still going on. So today we're going to talk about a little bit what we found in this lit review. So my name is Lin Zhang. I'm an associate researcher from the Research Center for Research on Learning from the University of Kansas. Here with me to present our study is Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, Richard Carter. I'm from the University of Wyoming, assistant professor in special education. So excited to be here and to present. And then Dr. Zhang, we have a few more people we want to mention real quick.
Yeah, so this research team actually consists of Dr. Carter, assistant professor, myself, researcher, and we also have assistant professor from Four States, Dr. Yang, and K-12 educator, Xueqing Chen. And also we have two doc students, so it's a collaborative effort. And we were interested in this because COVID-19 pandemic is a global phenomenon, and researchers from different disciplines and around the globe really join this effort to figure out what happened and what's going on and what strategy we can use to support teacher and faculty member. So that's also our focus as a team, collaborative team. So how can we support researchers around the globe? So that's why we did this study. Because when we formed this team, and then we realized even before the pandemic, the online learning in higher education and K-12 has gained the growth attraction because of its flexibility and affordability. It can really support students, especially students probably from the marginalized group, which can have access to the high quality education. But during the pandemic, there are lots of various challenges and also opportunities that have emerged in terms of how to better support students' learning, motivation, and mental health, things like that, and also how to support faculty members, researchers, and instruction designer to better design online learning courses that can provide high quality education opportunities for all students. So that's where our interest came from, and also want to contribute a little bit to the literature in terms of what really happened during this period of time and what researchers have done to support those populations we just mentioned about. So the overall purpose of this study, of this literature review, is to provide a holistic view of research that investigated online learning in higher education around the globe during COVID-19, this ongoing pandemic. So we were looking at two overarching research questions. In the first one, what is the basic bibliometric of research investigating a pandemic imposed online learning in higher education around the globe? Because all of a sudden the whole world, students and faculty members and educators, transitioned very quickly to the online learning mode. So we were interested in what kind of studies have been done during this period of time, and what will be the geographic distribution of those publications that reported on online learning in higher education. And so the second component of first research questions is what are the most co-cited references? So as one of the indicator of the bibliometric of those research, co-citation is sort of a reliable measure of those scholarly work, the contribution or contributor to the field. So we want to figure out, when we were studying the COVID-19 pandemic online learning, so what are those pieces that have been co-cited mostly in the reviewed studies in our database? So that's why we include this component as one of the sub questions. And the second question of our research question is what themes have emerged from the literature. So that's another thing we want to figure out, what what things, specifically things or topic that researchers have investigated during this period of time, and whether things has changed or not changed, or whether there are new things in terms of online learning have emerged because of COVID-19. So that's those things we were really interested in. And in terms of the method, so we use this bibliometric analysis to analyze the data and to search literature and analyze data. So we use Web of Science of our major database to search those literature. And so the keywords, key terms we use to search those literature, including online learning, higher education, and COVID-19 as a different various combinations in different terms. And the time frame we used is from January 2020 to August 2021, because right after COVID-19, the outbreak COVID-19, and up until the time we conducted the study. And so this inclusion criteria we used for these studies, first peer review, those studies are from peer review journals, articles, or conference proceedings, and they report empirical studies, including experiments, observations, surveys, and also specific studies that reported how those affected members or researchers in higher education use specific technology strategies, and how they what their experiences would be in terms of redesigning courses and using technology and applying instructional practices. So all of those are our inclusion criteria, and for us to be able to figure out what happened and what was happening during that period of time. And the data analysis tool and the strategy we used is this sort of machine learning based tool called VOS Viewer, which has been widely used to do the bibliometric analysis or literature review. So specifically, we use descriptive statistic analysis to figure out the geographic distribution of those publications and how many publications from which countries, and we'll be able to provide this sort of a map. And also, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we use this co-citation analysis to figure out what are the most prominent literatures or studies or dominant we have identified from our database. And the last one is we leverage one occurrence mapping functionality afforded by VOS Viewer to do the text mining to figure out the keywords from the literature and how those keywords are connected with each other, how closely are those keywords related to each other. So I think Dr. Carter will present those findings from these studies.
Yeah, so thank you. And so what we see is the geographical distribution of the publications, of course, and then mainly we see that they are focused in areas that are in countries that do have, and that we would historically, anticipate to have the infrastructure to, one, set forth research projects, and then carry them out and then disseminate these disseminate these findings. So the United States being number one, India two, China three, Spain four, and then Saudi Arabia number five. And then also we can think about these as being denser population area countries, et cetera, that really do showed well when it came to research that was, one, being conducted and then being disseminated. And again, we're going to say this as rapidly. So I mean, when we think about the limitation, et cetera, is then we think about as these projects came out, the many projects that were started on that were started during the time of COVID 2020, 21 are ongoing. And so we do see and acknowledge that those would not have come out yet, but will inform this process in the future. Mm-hmm. And so for the co-cited piece, this really became interesting to us for a couple of reasons. I'm going to just do this quickly, that we've got the pieces or the content or the focus areas of these really sit around a couple of areas. One, strategies that emerge from findings. This was important in this time to prepare our higher education faculty as well as students, et cetera, into how to access the online learning environment. And then we also look at areas of mental health and students, how their how they view their progress in online learning. With the rapid shift, many students went from, as we know, fully face to face to fully online, and the field really spent a significant amount of the research space thinking about what was that implication for those students. We also pulled from findings suggest that models of technology acceptance models, for instance, the TAM model was really investigated by scholars during this time to give a sense of what of how technology was implemented, how it was adopted, et cetera, and how to inform this process. Now, we're not necessarily informing the scholars that have studied TAM the whole time, right? I mean, really, what another point of this that's probably different from other areas in time is that you're informing the entire field. It's something that they did not know that they would need to know about one month. The next month, we need to know about this instantly. And so that's really another kind of fascinating finding from this is where scholars spent their time writing. And then the methodologies to carry it out. Yeah. So to carry out this research, those were all interesting pieces, which did yield these themes. We have 7 of them to discuss. But I think what this visualization does is show you the vastness of, even within that small amount of time that we discussed through 2020 through August 2021, that there were a lot of different directions that research went. And so as we go through and look at these next things here, then we can kind of get a sense of what the major points were. One, and this was really fascinating for us in a couple of reasons, was that the areas of medical education and chemistry were by far the most, I won't say rapid. They disseminated the most findings the quickest in that amount of time. Mainly with medical education, it was around the psychological impact of medical students that were again kind of thrust into this environment that we were all thrust into, of how does this change many of our different areas of practice or preparation. Chemistry, when we're looking at laboratory-based instruction versus how do we change that to remote instruction. So you're looking at disciplines that are really investigating their own, how are we going to do this? And those two really emerged as they had just the most prevalence of work. Then we get down into our, after 1 and 2, we really get down into more holistic areas that really affect everyone. And again, this goes back to technology acceptance models. What does this look like for, universities of higher education that have to do this rapidly? What does this look like for students? Those pieces were in there. Student perceptions and satisfaction was a big one, because again, now we have students that have gone from one mode of instruction to another. What does that mean for them, and how are we ensuring that during this time that we are delivering a satisfactory experience? Student performance and design, kind of the same idea. What does student performance look like in, traditionally in a face-to-face environment versus what does it look like in a fully online? So there was work around that. Classrooms and distance learning settings. Yeah, so that makes all the sense in the world. And then support and community. So, also how do we build out the resources that are in the community, be they the community at large where the students live, or be they at the university community resources, how do we build that out to support students? Those were our big findings. And then, so what that means for us and the discussions and implications for this is that with the citations were important for us to mainly see how the work was being disseminated, who was seeing it, and then how was it informing the field moving forward during this time. What we did find is that the most identified pieces that we found, as well as the highly co-cited documents, are open access, which is kind of brings up a little bit of a debate about how we feel or how the field kind of interprets open access versus traditional publishing and what that means. Here, the idea was that individuals had access to this information quickly and without, barriers that are historically in place for traditional publishing. Another kind of fascinating piece was that traditional publishing houses did at times offer these pieces for free of charge, right? So they kind of took the paywall down and made articles open access. And then months later, they put the paywall back up, but with the idea that, hey, we need information quickly and we need as many people to get their hands on it as possible. So that was a way to ensure that those that needed questions answered, had the best information at the time to answer those questions. And then the idea of just rapid turnaround, how quickly this was done. We saw that the methodologies used, many of these would be case studies. Many of these methodologies were not, again, well, those studies are occurring now. Those are not the ones that are included in this study. But we saw multiple approaches to, one, get the best of what we know as to the field as quickly as possible. And then we also found that it's rapid, but it's an imbalanced distribution of evolving literature. That looks in a couple of different ways. One, what we see with the imbalance was, if we go back to the globe piece, is that it's coming out of certain areas. It's coming out of certain countries. So, I mean, that creates kind of a challenge when we think about, can we say that our understandings of COVID during this time is fully represented in the literature in Africa? This says no, and that is critical. That is we need to ensure that we have understandings of what this means globally, instead of just coming from one area. I mean, as you can see, the United States was very prolific in this, and so how do we support? What can we learn to support scholars from multiple countries to address questions when they come up in this manner? So that's one. And then, okay, nice. And then we keep going. All right, so ongoing, that's Dr. John's way of saying speed it up. So ongoing and emerging challenges. All right, so these are going to be I probably shouldn't even read these. I mean, these are all ones that we know. And that would be low level of student motivation and satisfaction. So these articles were trying to address these in some form or fashion. And again, all articles ended with the idea that more research is needed. So this just really does set us forward. What we're going to present says, here's what happened during this time. And then here are the issues that did emerge. Mental health issues of faculty and students, both critical. We saw that both in medical education, but we saw it woven throughout all of these pieces. Digital competencies to be to be successful in the learning environment, or your ability to produce whatever skill that you're trying to do. Barriers to adopting new learning modalities. What are those pieces in place? That's become very apparent through the both access as well as hardware issues that have kind of emerged from this past year, 2 years now. Lack of access to infrastructure and software. Absolutely, the digital divide very much there and represented in these articles. And then for us, important to us because we come from special education, was this lack of studies focused on students with disabilities, and what does that mean? And then placing innovative pedagogies at the forefront of online learning. What does this look like? Re-envisioning or envisioning or building upon what we know from what does online learning look like for students that have never engaged in online learning environments, and then what skills do we need to prepare our faculty members to create engaging and meaningful learning environments, and how are these pedagogies impacting that? Right?
Thank you, Dr. Carter. I think one of the another most fascinating finding for me from this piece is we identify 1,061 articles from scholars conducted by scholars from 103 countries. I think that's a vast number of studies and scholars, right? Which makes sense because the global pandemic and global phenomenon involves everybody on this earth, I guess. So because it concerns everybody. So I think it also speaks to the need for us to work together, to collaborate together with each other, and to problem solve and to investigate what possible solutions to those ongoing challenges. So I think that's very interesting to me and fascinating to me. And doesn't mean, okay, so we have this data and that's it. So those data can provide and will provide like lots of information that we can use and for our future research and practices. I think that's why I feel like this piece is very interesting. And not because we did this study, but it's just a lot of information we can pull from. And so thank you for your interest in this one and come to our presentation. And we are very pleased that this study has been published in the British Journal of Education Technology earlier this year. So if you're interested, please download the full article, because we do have lots of other information that we didn't have time to cover during this presentation. And if you don't have access, please email us and we'll be happy to provide the full article. So thank you so much again, and please let us know if you have any questions or want to contact us.
Thank you much.